Can a paddle with industrial diamond dust actually live up to the hype? I'll be honest. When 60 told me they were embedding diamond particles in epoxy on their new paddle face, my first thought was marketing theater. Another texture gimmick that'll wear down in 2 weeks. But after putting a whole ton of time on the Black Opal, I found something I wasn't expecting. A paddle that's genuinely one of the hardest hitting, highest spinning paddles I've tested, with a construction approach that's completely different from what most brands are doing right now. Full disclosure here, 60 sent me this paddle to play and test with no strings attached. No money changed hands, I'm not obligated to create content for them, and these are my honest impressions from a whole bunch of time in gameplay. The retail price is $250, but you can get it for around $225 with code MPB, which earns me a small kickback to continue creating content just like this. Now, I do need to mention something about how the code works, and I'll get into that later because it's important for you to understand before you buy. What I'm going to show you is a paddle that sits somewhere between the Selkirk Boomstick and the Rhombus Quanta in feel, but delivers more rebound speed and spin than either. It's not for everyone. This thing demands precise control. But if you can handle it, the Black Opal might just redefine what you thought a foam core paddle could do. 60 built the Black Opal around a construction philosophy that skips the Gen 3 phase, and they went straight to Gen 4 full foam concept, sourcing materials from multiple continents and engineering this thing like aerospace equipment. The core is their G4 Aerospace solid foam sourced from Scandinavia. It's a high-density closed-cell material engineered for stiffness and minimal vibration. It's a 14mm core surrounded by a thin EVA perimeter band and a secondary outer foam layer that extends all the way to the edge. But here's where it gets different. Instead of a flexible thermoformed edge like most paddles use right now, 60 bonds a solid carbon perimeter ring, they call it the carbon light frame, permanently during the cure cycle. That creates a more rigid structure than typical thermoform builds, which should theoretically improve energy transfer and edge stability. I'm sorry that I don't have any fancy graphics to share with you right here. Between the face and the core, there's what they call the power gel layer, a performance gel sourced from Africa that's designed to enhance both dwell time and rebound. The idea is to create that pocket feel on impact while still delivering explosive energy return. Then there's the surface. The diamond tough texture uses a peel ply layer with actual industrial grade diamond dust suspended in the epoxy. Under direct light, the face visibly sparkles, which maybe you can see here. Now, I have both the 60 Ruby Pro and Black Opal, and if you run your hand across the Ruby Pro, it feels sharp and very abrasive, sort of like a coarse nail file. 60 designed this with what they claim is self-healing behavior. As the top layer of epoxy wears down through play, new diamond particles get exposed underneath, theoretically maintaining spin over the paddle's lifespan rather than degrading like traditional textures. However, my Black Opal surface has a standard level of grit, nothing compared to the Ruby Pro. The Thrive Fury or RPM Friction Pro surfaces are much more gritty than the Black Opal I'm holding. The handle uses what they call the shock shield system, silicone dampening inside hard polyurethane pallets, replacing the standard material most other paddles use. The goal is a firmer, more connected feel while still mitigating vibration. On paper, this is an ambitious material stack. The question is whether all this aerospace foam and diamond dust actually translates to better performance, or if it's just expensive engineering that doesn't matter once you're standing at the kitchen line. So let me give you the numbers on this test unit. Static weight came in at 8.13 ounces, right in the middle of the standard range. Swing weight measured 115.5, which is on the lighter, more maneuverable side. Twist weight of 6.25 puts it around average for stability, and the bounce point sits at 24.2 centimeters, giving a slightly headlight feel in hand. The shape is 60's hybrid diamond profile, 16.25 inches long by 7.75 inches wide, with a 5.5-inch handle and a 4.125-inch grip circumference. That 14mm core thickness positions it between the ultra-thin speed paddles and the thicker control-oriented builds. For performance testing, my serves averaged around 2 miles an hour faster than my main, the RPM Friction Pro. So yeah, it hits hard. Spin production hit around the high 90s percentile territory based on how it compared to other higher grit surfaces. Punch volley speeds came out exceptionally strong with minimal input generating surprising pace. A slight flick will send the ball back with more pace than you put into it. If you're in a game and playing nervously, I would not play this paddle until you are comfortable with all aspects of its play. At $250, it's positioned below the ceiling of premium paddles but above the mid-tier options. Given the aerospace foam, diamond-infused surface, power gel interface, and shock shield handle system, the spec sheet suggests serious engineering investment, reportedly 2 years' worth. Whether that investment translates to value depends entirely on what happened when I actually played with it. For the first session, I walked on expecting controlled power, something manageable out of the box. That's what I was expecting for no rhyme or reason. What I got instead was a paddle that sent my first 3 dinks sailing in a way that I didn't expect, and not in a good way. Expect a long calibration period with the Opal. This paddle is non-linear in its power response. A 60% swing doesn't give you 60% output, it gives you closer to 80%. A full acceleration borders on overkill. Initially, I thought I'd received a defective unit because the energy return felt excessive compared to the specs. But after adjusting my mechanics, shortening my backswing, smoothing out my acceleration, letting contact happen closer to my body, something clicked. The G4 foam and power gel layer create this deep pocket feel on impact. The ball compresses into the face, you feel it dwell for a split second, then it unloads with explosive rebound. It's soft enough to give you feedback, but springy enough to multiply your input. The sound profile is interesting too, and also developing. Mine does not have this deep bassy thud, it's more a muted, sharp crack, if that makes any sense. Like I said, it's developing. On drives and serves, the spin window is massive. I could accelerate up the back of the ball for heavy topspin without fear of sending it long. The diamond grit just grabs the ball and the rebound launches it forward with pace. The surface texture on my test unit is surprisingly average, and so far it's stayed that way even after 35 to 40 plus hours of play. When I run my hand across it expecting some wear, it's still sharp as it was new. Now, if it has to do with the self-healing claim, I don't know. Maybe it's legitimate, but I don't know. I need about 120 more hours on it. At the kitchen during hand battles, the instantaneous pop surprised me. Even minimal punch shots produced heavy pace. The sweet spot has that trampoline-like energy, so exchanges felt almost effortless until I engaged too much wrist on a flick and watched it sail deep. This paddle punishes over-acceleration. Here's where it contradicted my expectations based on the specs. With that 115.5 swing weight, I assumed it would feel fast, but maybe lack penetration on drives. Instead, the carbon light frame and dual foam structure provides serious perimeter rigidity. Mishits don't twist the handle or send vibration through the grip. The sweet spot feels broader than a typical 14mm core, offering a whole bunch of confidence during fast-paced exchanges. But the control curve is steep. Mid-tempo flicks that would land perfectly with my usual battle jump long with the black Opal. Soft dinks required conscious mechanical adjustments, less backswing, more compact follow-through, trusting the paddle's stored energy to do the work. Once I adapted my tempo, the directional accuracy became predictable. The dwell gives enough feedback to shape shots with precision, and the grit lets you roll drops with serious bite. On resets and blocks, if you soften your hand and absorb pace, the paddle performs beautifully. But if you push even slightly, blocks turn into missiles. It took me probably 5 sessions to stop overhitting my resets and blocks. One thing that stood out over multiple sessions, this paddle rewards players who've developed compact, efficient mechanics. Sometimes that's me and sometimes it's not. Linear, full tennis-style strokes will overshoot unless you adjust big time. But once you flatten and compact your swing, the Opal delivers world-class pace and spin with minimal effort. I think one of the Opal's defining characteristics is its nonlinear power profile. It's exponential in its response. So the harder you swing, the more it multiplies your input beyond what feels proportional. And that happens because of how the foam core, power gel interface, and solid carbon frame work together. The G4 foam stores energy during compression, the power gel layer enhances the elastic response, and the rigid perimeter prevents energy loss through frame flex. The G4 foam stores energy during compression, the power gel layer enhances the elastic response, and the rigid perimeter prevents energy loss through frame flex. The result is a paddle that doesn't just return what you put in, it amplifies it. For experienced players with calibrated mechanics, this is a devastating weapon from mid-court forward. You can finish points with compact counters and quick volleys without needing huge swings. For players who rely on longer, more linear strokes, or for beginners still developing touch, this paddle will be frustrating because it demands precision. Every stroke has to be intentional because the margin for error here is much smaller. I think there's something to this diamond-infused surface in terms of compounding this characteristic. With elite level grip, you get serious RPM on both topspin drive and touch shots, but that grip also means if your paddle face is angled slightly off, the ball goes exactly where you aimed it, even if that wasn't what you had intended. So if it's not clear, the Opal is not a paddle that flatters your weaknesses. It exposes them, but it also amplifies your strengths in a way that few paddles can actually match. The basic specs, static weight at 8.13 ounces and swing weight at 115.5, do support weight additions well without making this paddle feel uncomfortably heavy. I did experiment with weight at the 3 and 9 o'clock positions to widen the sweet spot because the sweet spot here is slightly smaller. Adding about 3 grams on each side increased stability on off-center hits and gave drives more weight behind them. A small amount at the tip, maybe 1 to 2 grams, also increased plow-through without dramatically shifting the balance point. I don't think these were necessary fixes, more optional improvements. Stock, the paddle is playable for someone with the mechanics to control it. With weight, it becomes more forgiving and more versatile. Earlier, I alluded to the sound profile of this paddle and its acoustic evolution, and I think there's a modest break-in period where the foam settles. And the diamond tough surface has shown no measurable degradation and no loss of tactile grip. At $250, the Black Opal sits in the upper mid-tier of the premium paddle market. It delivers flagship performance below the price ceiling of some other top-tier options. The closest comparisons are the Selkirk Boomstick, Body Helix Flick F1, and Ronda's Ripple. They all deliver massive firepower and that audible, springy head-turning presence on the court. The difference is feel. The Opal has denser dwell and more elastic rebound similar to the Ripple, while the others are a bit stiffer with that sharp immediate crack. If you want raw power with a plusher pocket, I think the Opal is a strong choice. If you want something stiffer and boomier, the Boomstick might suit you better. The GX2 Power is more controlled out of the box. The Opal requires more discipline to tame. It's up to you if you want to spend the time doing it. Among other power paddles like the Body Helix Flick F1, Yola Pro 4, or Thrive Fury, the Black Opal represents the most trampoline-like plush entry. It's denser on impact, but more explosive on release than most in this category. So I think this paddle is ideal for advanced or competitive players who want maximum power and spin with a full foam plush feel. If you've developed compact, efficient mechanics and can adjust your tempo on the fly, the Opal will reward you with pace and spin that feel disproportionate to your effort. This is not for beginners rolling up to rec play or players still developing touch. It's also not for players who rely on gentle tempo or prefer a paddle that flatters mistakes. The Black Opal does demand precise control. And to be straight up with you, this paddle is not for me. I've spent weeks testing it. I understand what it does and why people will love it, but it's not going in my bag for tournament play. If you bring anxiety or nerves to the court, and let's be real, we all do sometimes, this paddle will amplify them by a factor of 10. Every hesitation in your mechanics, every moment of doubt about your contact point, every bit of tension in your grip gets magnified because the paddle is so responsive. When I'm playing loose and confident, the Black Opal feels amazing. When I'm tight or second-guessing myself, it punishes every uncertain stroke. It also swings heavier than the numbers suggest and denser than I prefer. Sure, the 8.13 ounce static weight isn't bad, but I think this solid foam core creates a substantial feel in hand that some players will love for the sense of stability it provides. For me, it just feels like I'm working harder than I want to during the entire game. Yeah, sure, you'll hit hard, the power is undeniable, but there's a physical and maybe even mental cost to swinging something this dense and powerful for 3 hours. This doesn't make it a bad paddle, it makes it a specific paddle for a specific type of player. If you're someone who plays with aggressive confidence, who trusts your mechanics even under pressure, and who wants maximum firepower with a plush or denser foam feel, the Black Opal delivers. But if you're like me, someone who values a lighter, more forgiving feel that doesn't turn mental mistakes into physical ones, you'll want to look elsewhere. The deciding factor: can you play loose and committed even when the stakes are high? If yes, this paddle rewards that mindset. If you tend to tighten up or play tentative when it matters, this paddle will make those moments harder, not easier. Okay, let's wrap this up. That's it. That's the 6-0 Black Opal review. This paddle delivers elite tier power and spin with a plush, full foam feel that's completely different than the other foam cores on the market today. I do recommend it, but with a particular condition. You need to have the will to control it. If you're an advanced player who can adapt your tempo, shorten your backswing, and trust the paddle to do the work, the Black Opal becomes a devastating weapon. If you're still developing consistent touch or you prefer a paddle that's forgiving right out of the box, this is going to frustrate you. The nonlinear power response, diamond-infused surface, and aerospace foam core combine to create something rare. A paddle that feels soft on impact but explosive on release with spin retention that genuinely seems to hold up. And I'm also curious, would you invest in a paddle that demands this much control to unlock its potential? Or do you prefer something that's forgiving right out of the box? Let me know in the comments. If you found this review helpful, hit that like button and subscribe for more honest paddle reviews just like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.